too many students are stuck in a loop of thinking, thinking, and thinking that they don't want to do the action that moves them towards better grades. Let me explain. A lot of the time, when a student gets home, they get straight into the delay phase. What I mean by this is they want to maximize the amount of time between what they're doing now, their current state, and the future state of doing action that moves them towards their grades, such as revision, learning, studying, flashcards, whatever. Right after the delay stage, so after they're like, okay, let me relax, let me get home, let me just figure out what to do in the meantime, and I'll just revise later. We'll worry about the problem later. After the delay phase comes the busy phase, right? This is when they're just preoccupied, thinking that they're busy by doing just the normal things that they know that it's not really working, but it's a metric of busyness, right? So they just get occupied at their desk. If their mum walks in, if their dad walks in, it's whatever. They look like they're doing work, right? So they just need to look like they're working. And in this busy phase, a lot of the time, it's a lot of just mundane things, right? Maybe just rereading notes. It could be watching YouTube videos. It could even be doing some generic practice questions. But why is this bad for them? Why is it that this doesn't produce the results? All of this, the student thinks that, okay, it's going to move them slightly forward. They probably know in the back of their head it's not going to give them the results that they're looking for. So why is it that they're stuck into this loop? And to understand this, you need to understand first how the mind works, right? And how it wants to protect you from knowing the unknown. So there's two concepts that you need to know. The first one is the confidence and time graph. So with this, the time is at the bottom and confidence is on the y-axis. So when you first start a task, the theory behind this is when you first start a task, your confidence, let's say, is going to be right around in the middle, right? You're not sure where you are, where your skill level is, but as you take those first repetitions, so let's say you start to learn maths and you learn the foundations of maths, you learn the basics, your confidence is going to go up, right? And in this first section of the graph, it's going to peak at just above where you started, right? So you're going to have more confidence than when you started. You're like, okay, this is easy. I'm picking up the fundamentals, picking up the easy bits and bobs quite fast. Then once you start actually running into the hard stuff, right? So you're going to peak when you first reach some hard topics, and it's going to be a downward battle there. Why? Because every topic, every progression that you're going to go through, it's going to be harder and harder. So it's going to take you more and more time. And after this, then once you go through most of the hard things and you start to piece things together, right? So if we look at maths, right? If we just look at it as just a pyramid, just fundamentals, basic concepts, and all of this. This is the easy, this is the hard. And our confidence, you expect that the more we know, the more confident we're going to be at a subject. But the confidence actually goes down because we know there's a lot that we don't know, right? Once we think we're closer and closer to reaching our goal, right? For A-level students, this would be reaching an A star or consistently getting those marks. But once we consistently hit, let's say, 75% of the knowledge, and we already know this, that's when our confidence starts to go up because we can already put things together and we know kind of what we don't know, right? We know that there's a few topics here and there that it connects to, but since there's a lot of prerequisite knowledge at this stage, in terms of all the knowledge you've just gained, your confidence starts going up. And from here, it just keeps going up, right? There's no stopping it. Sure, there can be like a little bump here, but overall, it's going to keep going up. Now, the main point of this graph that I want to focus on is actually this initial peak here, right? The reason I want to focus on this initial peak is our brain wants to keep us at the maximum confidence, right? With the least amount of effort being put in, right? So we get stuck into a loop of being very confident at something with the least amount of effort. So this is where you get stuck in your head because you have a thought, and then this thought leads you to thinking. So the thought of, okay, maybe I need to revise for maths, it pops into your head. So when you get that thought, you start thinking, okay, how am I going to revise that maths? You maybe start planning it, maybe you go, I need to do this subject here, this topic, and trying to figure things out, right? But since you're stuck into your head, there's actually no results being produced. However, because you've done the thinking, you've acted it out in your head how it's going to go when you revise maths. You have the thought in your head, right? So you go, okay, I'm going to revise maths, and you play it out in your head. You go, okay, I'm going to get home, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to knock out this topic, I'm going to do some practice questions here. So you plan it all in your head, or you just think of how you're going to do it, right? So you're going to think of the feeling of how it's going to be when you've revised maths. So this leads you to feeling, which isn't really good in this loop, because you get the feeling that it's good, especially when you tell other people. If you tell your friends or family, you go, "Oh, I'm going to revise maths tonight," and then they support you, they encourage you on that, and they give you that dopamine, they give you the good response that you think you deserve, because you're going to do some maths tonight. But in reality, since it's all in your head and you haven't done anything yet, but you've got a good response, you have a positive feeling, right? So with this positive feeling, you think, okay, everything's great, everything's great. Some time might pass, and you might not even get to the stage where you wanted to get at, right? You might have set a goal too big, or you've planned out and something just popped up. You can never always expect what happens in your life, but some time passes, then another thought happens. And this thought is a much more negative thought, because it's a thought about your previous whole system that happened, right? So it's a thought about all of this. And when you think about all of that, a thought might pop in like, oh, I'm not good enough, right? Or, oh, I'm just dumb, I'm lazy. And you make the problem about yourself. When you start thinking about it more, that also doesn't produce results, right? We've already talked about how thinking doesn't produce results. So every time that you think and you're like, okay, well, I'm just lazy, and you kind of just give up on that maybe, or you try and engage it, you go, oh, I'm actually not lazy, I'll do this tonight. And you build up yourself. That's when this issue comes in of you just keep thinking, you keep feeling, and a thought just pops in to engage that loop, right? So how do both of these things correlate? Well, when you keep thinking and when you keep feeling, you want to stay at the maximum confidence that you have. So your brain is going to prevent you from taking action that it knows there's a lot that needs to be traversed. It knows all the topics, you've covered it in class, you have the whole thick textbook in front of you. So you know there's a lot that you don't know. However, if you're stuck in your thoughts and you're like, oh, I'm going to do all of this, all of that tonight, and you try and basically hype yourself up and keep it in your head, because at the end of the day, your thoughts, they have no consequences. So you can think whatever you want and you can feel whatever you want. But your mind takes you to a place where you're not doing any action towards your grades, because it's preventing you from feeling the anxiety, the pressure of, wow, there's a lot to get through. So how do we actually break it? Because the school system right now, it's in a way where it's not testing you and preparing you in the same conditions that it is for exams, right? Because we've got two sides of the coin. We've got school and exams. And in school, you have open book, right? So all the notes are in front of you, you have the textbook in front of you, and you're just used to having maybe people around you, the teacher helping you. But the exam condition, the exams, there's no help, right? So it's all you, right? Secondly, in school, there's a lot of retakes, right? So you can always just retake a mock, you can always redo a homework question. There's low stakes here. But with the exam, for most people, because they have that pressure of time, university, degree, apprenticeship, it's high stakes. And the last thing is that there's the pressure of time, right? This goes with the stakes as well. But school, you kind of have infinite time, because there's always the next lesson, there's always the next week you can do something, right? So there's a lot of time. Meanwhile, in the exam, for a lot of people, it's 2 hours, let's say just limited time, right? So now that we know all of these three concepts about how the exam conditions are way different to what school is preparing you for, and how your mind is trying to keep you into this comfort zone of just doing the same things, of being in your head without taking action, how do we take that step forward to actually take progress in getting better grades that we want to have? See, it's not that this person, or most A-level students, it's not that they're lazy. It's not that they have low motivation, and it's definitely not that they lack discipline. Because all of these things, right, they don't exist when these students are talking to friends, when they're playing football at lunchtime, right? So when playing sports, and when they're doing something that they're passionate about, right? So let's say you've got someone and they love playing chess. These things, these concepts of being lazy, low motivation, discipline, they don't exist when they're doing something that they actually know how to do and know the steps to take, right? That's a hint. Because when you're talking to friends, when you're playing sports, when you're playing chess, you're just doing things that you actually are doing and taking physical action towards it is because you know how to do it. You've broken that physical barrier. Your friend comes up to you and you have to engage that conversation. There's no way of dodging it. You can't play out the conversation in your head. So you have to put it into the physical world. Same with sports, same with chess, same with anything that you do. You have to transfer it into the physical world because you can always play some chess and think of the moves in your head. But if you don't play the move in the real world, then nothing's going to happen. The game isn't going to progress. The same with your grades. They aren't going to get better if you're just stuck in your head. So let's talk about possible fixes, because it's all good talking about what the problems are, but what's the solution to these problems? So if you've got a person and they're just stuck inside of their head, the solution would just be to do stuff outside of their head. And how do we do that? One good exercise for doing this is getting a piece of paper and just taking the first step. What's the next best thing you can do, right? So let's say you want to revise maths. That's not good enough because the goal is too big that your brain procrastinates that automatically because it's too big. There's too many components to it. So you want to break it down. What's the next best thing, right? You want to revise maths, maybe you want to revise differentiation. However, that could also be a huge topic. So how do you break it down further? Maybe focus on learning the fundamentals first, right? Break down more and more until you find the next best thing that you can do. Because the same people that are talking to their friends, the same people who are just playing video games and playing chess, they're just finding the next best thing they can do. If you're playing chess, just find out the next best move on the board. Maybe you can think a few moves ahead, but the minimum you can do is just play a move. Same with maths. It's just find a topic you're bad at and just do it. Because you're not going to start this journey of going from 0 to 100 knowledge, and you're not going through this portion of it, right? You're not going through the first 70% before reaching the last 30. You have to first take that first step of getting that first fundamental piece down, then get in the next, then get in the next, then get in the next. So find the next best thing that you can do and just work on it. Just get through it. And even better, write down your thoughts on paper, right? Especially if you're planning, write down a plan, and you can even get other people to hold you accountable for it. I would kind of be careful of that because you might get a positive response when you haven't actually done anything. But write down a time that you're going to do it, write down how you're going to do something, also write down why you're going to do it, right? And be as precise with these as you can. Time, how, why, what. So you want to go through, okay, I'm going to revise some maths at, let's say, 6 p.m. I'm going to do it by making some flashcards and learning the fundamentals of differentiation. The reason I'm going to do it is because it's my weakest subject right now, and I really want to get that A star to get a degree apprenticeship. In addition, what am I going to learn? Write down the key bullet points of what you're going to learn. If you really struggle at taking that first action, another thing that you can do to get out of this thought loop, right, of thought, thinking, and feeling, because this loop is its own little brain, right? And if you want to escape it and just go towards doing output, just take one physical action. If you're just laying in bed, if you're just on your phone, take one physical action to break it out of your mental and to put it into the physical, to put it into the real world where it's like, okay, I'm putting down my phone. What's the next step? Okay, walk to your desk. Okay, what's the next step? And just think of physical tasks. As long as you get it out of your mental, and then if you have a confusion with it, if you think to yourself, this is useless, just write it down. Because if you write it down, you're putting it into the physical and you can see for yourself, wow, I'm just procrastinating, aren't I? The more physical actions you do compared to the mental actions you do is how you make progress. The mental loop doesn't end when you think harder. It ends when you see something in the physical, when you see yourself making progress and moving towards the grades. And it's something you can track. It's something you can be like, I've done that today. It's not something where it's like, oh yeah, I thought of doing maths today for an hour. It's, You know, I sat down and I was doing practice questions for an hour. That's what matters and that's what counts. Doing these physical actions is the first step you have to take to break yourself out of the loop that you've been stuck in.